Today, I will introduce our speaker, and Shani Avni currently is at the RIT Cary Graphic Arts Collection in Rochester. The RIT collection is preserving that rare collection of Hebrew wood types from or used by the Jewish American press at the turn of the 20th century. The Cary Graphic Arts Collection at RIT is one of the world's premier libraries on graphic communication, history, and practices, at least when it's not being torn up. Their growing library holds over 45,000 volumes and 130 archival collections. Shani, though, is the Ismar David Assistant Curator at RIT at the Cary and has been there since 2020. She designs, researches, teaches, consults, writes, and lectures on Hebrew type design and typography. She holds a BA in graphic design from Shankar College in Israel and an MA in typeface design from the University of Reading in the UK. For her MA thesis, she researched the David Hebrew typeface family and, since receiving her degree, continues to do so. In 2017, she was chosen for the Cary Research Fellowship, where David's work is archived. Her work in the Cary includes facilitating the access, arrangement, description, preservation, and enhancement of the Ismar David papers, as well as processing and researching the Printing Realia collection of historic Hebrew and Yiddish wood type. She's also a really nice person, so we're very happy to have her today. Shani, it's all yours. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Jim and Stephanie and Logan and everyone in Hamilton. I'm super happy to be here. And I have a lot to share with you today. So bear with me. I'm good with, if you wanna ask me questions during my presentation, I'm perfectly fine with it. And I can start by sharing my screen. Let me get this going. Let me know. All right. So you can all see the white slide that says Hebrew wood type, right?
Perfect.
Okay. So as Jim introduced the Cary collection, we are one of the world's premier libraries on graphic communication, history, and practices. And today I want to focus on our technology collection. We focus on preserving the heritage of letterpress printing, and we maintain working printing presses and all the additional equipment that is needed for printing. And our historic collection is very much alive. It is being preserved through its active use in a wide range of activities like classes and workshops, special events that also include online events recently, and visits from scholars and artists in residence. And at the moment, we are hosting artist and printmaker Lynn Avadenka, who is working with the Hebrew wood type collection. She's creating fine art editions, which will be included in her upcoming solo exhibition about the role of Jewish women in early Hebrew printing. So you are all invited to hear more about this wonderful project from Lynn herself. She will give a talk for our next Cary online event on September 1st. Now I'm looking forward to it very much. And yes, these days the Cary is moving to a temporary location to accommodate the construction of a new makerspace and performance art complex. So after about 30 years, we are now starting this long-awaited renovation. And we ask you to please check back with us in about 2 years when we will have our new space up and ready. So the Cary typeface collection includes thousands of metal and wood fonts, the majority of which are American made, and up until 2014, all of which were exclusively of Latin characters. In an effort to expand the collection coverage of global scripts, the Cary acquired a rare and important collection of some 40 fonts of Hebrew wood type. The collection was acquired from the artist and collector Richard Rockford. He is a found material artist who owns and operates his antique shop in Clarence, New York, and he started collecting Hebrew wood type in the early 70s. Acquiring this collection was the beginning of a very long process of converting the letters into archival objects that are accessible for printing, teaching, and research. And the first step was to very carefully clean and restore the wood types. And this was made possible through the Adopt a Font volunteer program initiated by our associate curator and master printer, Amelia Fontenelle. Most of our volunteers were not familiar at all with the Hebrew script, and yet they did a really great job of cleaning, measuring, sorting the type into boxes according to their sizes. And in order not to damage the wood type, they need to be cleaned with mineral spirit or with a friendlier replacement like vegetable oil. In the Cary, we use Crisco, which also happens to be kosher. It has no animal fat, and it is a solution to kosher rules of separating dairy and meat. And it was a very significant component of Jewish cooking, as you can see here in this bilingual cover of Crisco recipes for the Jewish housewife from 1933. So I'm wondering if that makes our letters kosher. I wouldn't know, but it was nice to discover that. So once the type was cleaned, it was time to look closely at the design of the letters and identify each of the style variations. So we can typeset each different font for proof printing. And we started doing that just as COVID-19 hit. So as you can see here, I'm at home and I'm setting the type in galleys and spacing them with corrugated cardboard. And once I completed the sets, I would send them over to Amelia, and she would print them in the Cary press room when it was possible, and sometimes in her own home press with the help of Finn, the printer's devil. And last February, we were able to come back to the Cary press room to continue the work. We received a grant from the Rochester Area Community Foundation for Historic Preservation, Restoration, and Literature Fund. And so we were able to add a student employee, Kat Ward, to our team. And here you can see her typesetting and proofing one set of letters. So now, after about 70 print runs, the entire collection is sorted into about 50 boxes. It is fully processed and cataloged and available as a historic resource. I want to take you through the finding aid. So this is how it looks like. You can scroll down and find all the information that we have about the collection and how it was archived and cataloged. You can take a very deep dive into this monster spreadsheet at your own responsibility. It has specific information about each font, its condition, the total number of sorts, missing sorts, altered letters, and more. And here is the link to our digital collection, where we uploaded all the images of the typeset in the galleys and their proof, their prints. And here you can see, I'm just choosing one set. You can see that I can zoom in, zoom out, and we have all the information on the left. So this is all online and available for you to have a look at and to study. So while I was processing this collection, I was able to identify two main style variations, which I named after design features that could be seen across the typeface. So on the left is the curved stroke variation, where the shape of the vertical stroke is curved in the letter Vav. And on the right, the droplet variation, where the shape of the tag resembles a droplet. The tag could be seen as an equivalent of a serif. It's the top left part of the letter. And the vertical stroke has a bottom heavy shape, as you can see here in the illustrations. And I was also able to identify 3 different weights: the regular, the condensed, and the extra condensed. So at that point, with a clearer idea of what the collection holds, I was ready to dig in deeper and further the research about these wood typefaces. And I was trying to answer some very important questions like, where did the typefaces come from? And what was printed with them? And who printed with them? And these questions are tricky to answer. First of all, since none of the blocks in this collection have a manufacturer mark, their provenance is still obscure. We do know that their height to paper is American size, so at about 0.918 inches. So it's probably safe to assume that they are American made from the 19th century. So the first step I took was to start hunting for American Hebrew wood type specimen of that time, so I could visually analyze the letters and compare the design in the specimen with our printing proofs. And here is where I say a huge thanks to David Shields, who shared with me the many Hebrew specimens he has collected for his research. So thank you, David, for a great job that you're doing and for your generosity. I highly recommend following his research and checking out his website. It's a remarkable resource. So I very quickly learned that the process of comparing the letters in the specimen with our proofs was not ideal. First of all, the specimen show only random letters and not the entire Hebrew alphabet. For the letters that did appear, I only had the edited photos of those pages, not the original or not flat scans of the originals. And then there are the many variables that has to do with the differences in which the 2 printings were produced. So different presses, different papers, different inks, different letter sizes, and so on. So this is not a 100% kind of comparison of the outlines, but I think that the design features are distinct and that you can see when the typeface style does match. Like in this example, on the left are the letters shown in Tab's 1909 specimen, and on the right is how I kind of recreated this page with our type from the collection. And this is an example of Empire wood type around 1926, Eastern Brass and Wood Type Company after 1920. And it's not surprising at all that a lot of our type matches with Hamilton type. And here I owe a big thanks to Jim, who shared with me the Hamilton patterns and all the information that he has about them. And he pointed out to me that, as you can see here, the listing for Hebrew is class R, and the R stands for right. It indicates the right reading direction of the Hebrew. And in this document, I also saw that this type was available in 3 lines, up to 40 lines only. And that happens to be the exact sizes that we have in our collection. So maybe that's another very good sign. And then there was this question of who produced the patterns. Was it Hamilton or was it another type maker that they had acquired? So this is the timeline that we have so far. It still has holes in it, but from what we know by now, it seems like Hamilton were the ones who made them, but still no hard answers. And here are the images of the patterns from Jim. And Jim, would you like to kind of jump in and share with us what you have with you at the moment?
I would be glad to.
All right, so I'm going to stop my share.
It was first really interesting and wonderful that Shani reached out, because the Hebrew is one of the other languages that Hamilton cut, and to my knowledge, nothing had really been cut that way for a number of years. I was telling Shani before we began today that there was an order that was being shipped to Tel Aviv around the time I began getting close to being hired here. So around 2008. But even there, I don't know who cut that type or if it had been around for a while. And sadly, so many of the Hamilton records weren't well kept. So, but what I do have, of course, is the patterns from the collection. This is just part of the number that I've got. We are also fortunate that we're actually cutting it again because of a client who will not be named has ordered it from us. But it's very curious to me, this interest in Hebrew without having any background, because one of the things I first encountered at Hamilton was the fact that they are selling these plaques. Should you choose to buy one, um, it's great to see. But what interests me is, why was there that interest? Who were those individuals who said that they wanted it? There is something of a breakdown on the back, but it didn't give me the information I really wanted, which is to say, when I'm looking at the collection that Shani is showing off at Cary, it doesn't give me a true character count. And while I do have the Hamilton count, I'm going to need Amelia or Shani to say, well, you really ought to have more of those and less of those. And by the way, you've got it all upside down anyway. So I'm still working on that sort of thing, but it's been wonderful to go back to that part of history. And quite honestly, you need somebody like Shani saying, do a little research for me, because it's good stuff to know. So thank you for that chance.
And thank you, Jim, again for your generosity with the materials and yeah, and for keeping those patterns. It's really, it's wonderful to know that they're still in use. So speaking of history, I'm going to share my screen again. We'll go back to the presentation. Whoops. Second. All right. Okay, so yes, these are the all the patterns that Hamilton have, and it was wonderful to see and to have this resource, because here I can see not only a full character set, but I can also see the patterns, single patterns that were that you could make different letters from them. Oh, just a second. There is something that specific that I want to show you. We'll come back to that later. Okay, back to the collection. Okay, I had to kind of get my thoughts together and realize what we have, what we know so far in terms of the research. So we know that the American type height 0.918 inches. And we were able to recognize 2 styles, 3 weights. The large type sizes from 3 lines to 40 lines. And we roughly have a timeline of manufacturing and usage between 1830 and 1970, which is quite a period. And we know that this type served the Jewish American Yiddish and Hebrew speaking communities. And here I want to share with you how I think the story of those Jewish Yiddish-speaking immigrant communities was reflected in their typography. And for us to better understand that, I want to take you way back to the beginning, or a very, very brief overview of the development of the Hebrew script and type. So the modern Hebrew letter developed from the Aramaic or Assyrian.
Shani,
Yes.
do you want to be sharing your screen right now? We are not seeing your screen in case
really?
you want to be. Yes.
Yes, I very much want to share my screen.
Okay, sorry. We were just trying to follow along. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hang on. All right, let's do it again. And can you see this now?
We can see it now. Thank you.
Whew, okay, sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to start in the beginning. Here we are. The modern Hebrew letter developed from the Aramaic or Assyrian alphabet around 560 BCE. And Hebrew was the language of the Israelites and the Judean people for over 1300 years, when about 200 BCE, it died as a spoken language and was restricted to religious practices. And it was only reintroduced as a spoken language around the 1880s. So for this very long period of time, Hebrew was only read and copied, and scribes had to follow strict rules and could not change the shape of the holy letters, even at the cost of poor readability. The shapes of the letter forms were fixed, and they did not undergo the natural evolution that a secular script would undergo, for example, like the Latin script. With the invention of printing, was welcomed with enthusiasm by Jewish communities that were scattered in Europe amongst other nations. And as religious Hebrew manuscript played central role in their lives, printing them instead of copying them by hand increased the production and distribution of these texts and contributed to Hebrew readership. But the shift from written form to movable type was quite problematic. And punch cutters had no clear model of the Hebrew letter. Most of them did not know the script and the language, so they basically just copied shapes from existing manuscripts, usually, again, of poor readability. And while there was a period of some typographic development around the 15th century in Europe, it was relatively brief. The Jewish people suffered persecution and were often forced to flee and relocate their presses. And that prevented the continuous natural development that is so much needed for the refinement and improvement of type. One example of the slow and challenging development of Hebrew type can be seen in the shortage of typographic styles for Hebrew typefaces. Until the early 20th century, there was only one predominant style of type. It was manufactured in various foundries, mostly in Europe, and in several design variations. And it was usually called a generic name, meruba, which means square in Hebrew. And this is a reference to the square shape of the Hebrew formal writing style. So imagine this typographic reality, right? One style to rule them all. Across all printed formats, very different uses, whether it's a textbook printed with small text that requires typographic differentiation, or newspaper that demanded narrower letters in order to fit more words into one sheet, or a broadside that called for large and expressive display type. It was all based on this one formal meruba style. If we compare it with Latin type at that time, Hebrew had no equivalent of a cursive or italic styles, no sans serif, no display typefaces. So that was what people and how people read. And those typefaces that they were reading sometimes, again, were created by people who were not familiar with the Hebrew script. And once again, they copied shapes from existing sources, not necessarily understanding the authentic form of the letters. As in the case of the first Hebrew printing in America. So this is the Bay Psalm book. It's considered to be the first book printed in colonial America in 1640. And it includes a preface of Hebrew poetry and language written by clergyman and theologian Richard Mather. And he included 5 Hebrew words and 1 Hebrew letter in that scholarly preface. And the printer, Stephen Day, didn't have a Hebrew font, and he had to carve the letters from wood. So let's just think about that for a while, right? The first Hebrew type was in America was wood type. That's great. But it also means that it had to be considerably larger than the metal type for the English book text, as you can clearly see here in this page. And it again, you can see the typefaces even without understanding Hebrew or being able to read the words. You can see how clumsy and inconsistent the letters look. And another interesting point is that this printed Hebrew was not aimed at Hebrew readers or speakers or Jewish people. It was a Christian book. So Hebrew was printed, but not for a Hebrew reading audiences. In the following decades, we see more examples of single Hebrew words, Hebrew names for months, and Hebrew proverbs incorporated within scripture books. And only in 1735, the first book with passages of Hebrew text was published. It was a Hebrew grammar book by Judah Monis, a convert to Christianity and the first instructor of Hebrew in Harvard College. And for that printing, a complete set of Hebrew metal type was sent by a benefactor from London as a gift to Harvard. And here is another example. The Hebrew was printed specifically for the use of students for whom Hebrew was a required subject, so not native to the language. And it's a little bit later that the Jewish American community, it was still, sorry, the small Jewish American community at that time still got the books they required from Europe. Until 1820 and through 1924, where there was an increasingly steady flow of Jews that made their way to America, and the new market developed. So here, for example, we can see Isaac Lesser's English translation of Sephardic prayers from 1837. Lesser was a Jewish religious leader, teacher, scholar, and publisher, and he helped found the Jewish Press of America. So some decades later, Jews living in Eastern Europe under the Russian Tsar were brutally attacked by their non-Jewish neighbors and imperial officials. They were physically segregated and suffered oppressive laws that barred them from almost all means of providing for themselves. And so a vast number of these Yiddish-speaking Jews managed to leave centuries-old legacy behind them and flee to the US to establish their new homes. Here's a footage from New York City around 1939, and we can see Yiddish signs for Jewish American businesses. Now, most of these signs are hand-painted, and again, they are all based on one style, the Meruba style. And we can see that when the letters are well painted, the tool keeps their consistency and keep their balance, and the painter can control their proportions, the spacing between the letters, and the overall composition. When we're trying to transform these qualities into Hebrew printed typography, there is a challenge. And I want to show you an example. So on the left hand, there is the hand-painted sign for the M. Miller printing of better quality. The top word in Yiddish is printing, and it is hand-painted. And on the right side of the screen, you can see the digitized letters from our collection. So I want you to focus on that bottom horizontal stroke. And I can tell you that all of those strokes are written in exactly the same way and in exactly the same direction. And we can see what happens when they're hand painted by a consistent, let's say, brush, and what happens when they're transforming the media and there is an intervention there. It means, as far as the structure of the letters, that the in-stroke should look the same for all of those letters. The left part should have the same angle for the gimel, the nun, and the pei. But here we can see that this is the angle of the gimel. This is a different angle for the pei. And then the nun has a curve. And I was really trying to understand why. What's the reason for this shift? Why is this behaving like this? Why the designer chose to create that letter in that way? And I'm still looking for answers. If anybody has any idea or any reference, I'm more than happy to hear this and discuss this. I was guessing perhaps this is more of the same, the same phenomena. Hebrew type was needed, and the carver, the creator of that time in that technology, was not native to Hebrew, and he copied similar letters. And perhaps in that particular source that he was copying, that was the shape of the that happened to be the shape, or that is the shape that it looked like to his eyes. And now it is set in that style, in that typeface. But wait, it gets worse. So we know that around that time and in those communities, resources were scarce. These were not easy times, and there wasn't always the option of acquiring new typefaces. So as one example, and we have many examples for this in our collection, if you would have to set, let's say, a poster, and you would need to use a specific number of the letter nun, and you would run out of them, what would you do? You'd have to find a solution for this, right? So very often we see altered letters. In this case, just flip the block so it would be easier to see. So we have this nun, we have this gimel, and then we have this nun who is made out of a gimel. So here we can see a solution that the printer came up with. You simply block that space, and now you have a nun, but you have a different nun, and you're introducing more inconsistency into your typeface, and you're confusing the reader. This is one thing that we know that makes reading typefaces harder and more challenging. So the print shops that opened in the service of these growing Jewish communities represented a vibrant center for intense communal, religious, cultural, and literary life. However, they suffer from shortage of typographic resources. And we can see some of this shortage and some of the solutions in a few examples. So one example is this Hanukkah concert poster. And I really like this very creative solution for a display typeface. I wonder, maybe, again, the printer was just missing the het and the tet and used a larger size because that's what he had in the print shop. But nevertheless, maybe it is a creative decision and creates this differentiation and this effect of a display typeface, even with the same font. Another example is this broadside that lists the meeting of the Landsmannschaft. It was a mutual aid society for Jewish immigrants from the same European town or region. And if you look at the Lamed here, you can see it's not aligned. I don't know why it fell down. I don't know, maybe there wasn't any time to fix that. Maybe it wasn't a priority. We can only guess, but this is clearly a mistake. And it again introduces this something that comes between the reader and the message. And here is another example of this word concert poster for Herz Grossbard. He used to recite and perform classic Yiddish literature. And we can see this extremely condensed typeface where the letters are very distressed and highly inconsistent. Sometimes when I look at this design, it kind of feels to me that each letter actually comes from a different typeface. But we actually have this version in our collection, and it's fascinating to see. Again, I would love to one day retrace the origin of this design and kind of go into the minds of the people who created this. And of course, out of the 2.3 million Jews from Eastern Europe settled in the US, approximately 2 million read the daily Yiddish newspapers. And you can see there were many of them. And you can see here in the example of how generic their logos and mastheads were, again, using the same Aruba type variation that was available at the time. And then there was the forward, the biggest and most famous of all the Jewish daily newspapers. It was founded in 1897 by the Jewish Socialist Press Federation, and it was intended as a civic aid and a cohesive device for the Jewish immigrants from Europe. And it quickly became the leading Yiddish newspaper in the US. When we acquired the Woodtype collection in 2014, Rockford shared with us that he bought the drawers of Hebrew Woodtype in the early 70s from Walter Bick, who bought them from the Jewish Daily Forward. And this is a significant provenance and a very challenging one to prove. Again, considering there were so many newspapers out there at the time that were using similar types, we don't have the stamps for the manufacturer. We have very little information. So I was very excited to find out this rare specimen book that was produced by the Forwards in the 30s. There are only 2 known copies, at least in WorldCat, that exists now, and now one of them is available for free access online. And I was even more excited to find it has matching styles and sizes to the type that we have in the collection. For now I only have the digital scan of the specimen, so there is no way of knowing for certain if these are metal type or wood type. However, we do know that wood types were used for printing headlines and advertisements in the newspapers. The monotype and linotype were used only for small book typefaces, and bigger type was cast on a Ludlow or a Thompson caster and up to certain sizes. And we can even, in those scans, can see some of the defects that certainly look like wood type. I'm planning and kind of waiting to be able to visit in person the YIVU Institute for Jewish Research once they are reopened for visitor, to close examine that printed copy and hopefully to be able to learn more about it from the printing itself. I'm also planning to visit the forward business records that are kept in the YIVU Institute. Maybe there'll be some information, some business records, some correspondence that would give us more clue about where, what typefaces they bought and who they bought them from. And I'm very excited to share that next week I will finally be able to visit the Yiddish Book Center and look at the type collection and the Forward's last Yiddish linotype. So hopefully there'll be more. And as always, you know, there is just so much to research and so many mysteries to try and solve. And I think that the more we use this historical collection and keep it alive and active, the more we learn from it. And I want to finish this presentation and share with you this video of the multilingual print that we created in the press room with our motto, preservation through use. So preservation through use in English, shimur be'emtzaut shimush in Hebrew, and I'm probably butchering the Yiddish, so forgive me. Auffitung durch Banitzen. Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Thank you. Whew, I talked a lot.
Yes, but you talked well, so that's the important thing. Shani, what sort of things are being printed at RIT using the Hebrew type? And is it mostly specimens or other uses?
So we have Lynn that's working and making fine art edition that I can't wait for her to share with all of you. And the fact that she was able to come in so quickly just after we finished cataloging the whole collection is just extraordinary as far as I'm concerned, because as Lynn is working with this collection, we get to learn more from what she can tell us from actually working with it properly, not just proof reading, proof printing those very, very fast proofs, but actually using the type as it should be used in like ideal conditions. And for now, at least for the two close years, we won't be printing with the Hebrew type. We will be back to full printing activity in about 2 years in the new press room. And then we'll have much more activity. We have workshops that are planned also for introduction to the Hebrew letter and Hebrew typography itself, and also letterpress. So we have 2 years to keep on planning about what we will be printing with this collection. But again, I'm so excited about the fact that this collection is accessible for all to come in and work with and continue and further the research, because the more people that would engage with it and work with it and learn with it, certainly people not necessarily from our background, people with different focuses, the more the better, the more we would learn from it. So, and people are totally invited to approach us and talk to us about that. Amelia, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that even though our press room is disassembled right now and we won't be doing much printing, we did want to offer all of those digital specimens that are in the links so that people can scan it in and perhaps make your own typefaces. Or I know Shani and our student Kat Ward were in the process of digitizing and making a digital revival font of one of these faces. So even though the presses aren't running, we're still really happy to work with the digital imaging that we have. So be sure to check out those resources.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you, Amelia. That's a very, very good point.
I have one question. How much metal type do you have in the collection?
Amelia can answer that.
So we have about 1,800 fonts of metal type, but actually I'm in the process of inventorying everything. No Hebrew.
No Hebrew.
No Hebrew. No, this is the Hebrew types that I acquired in 2014 were the first non-Latin typefaces that came to RIT Cary collection. Everything else is Latin.
Okay, because I just printed a small miniature book of Rosenfeld's a poem, and I had to get it transliterated because I hadn't have a Hebrew type to do that, and I wasn't going to print it in black letters because that is something that's I can't read it myself, so it was just too much trouble. So I got it transliterated and I printed it in Latin, fonts, and it kind of took a little out of the project, but the project actually worked out very well. So I was just hoping that someone would have some metal Hebrew type so that, yes.
Right now, I know that the letter foundry of Michael and Winifred Bixler in Skaneateles, New York, you can purchase Hebrew from them. It's a monotype foundry. So that's one that I know of. And I think one of our listeners here, Lynn Avadenka, bought some of that typeface, and she just recently printed it. So
From
you need it.
Okay. Thank you.
Bixler's, yep.
Shani, there have
Shani?
been some questions about the variety of families, I guess that would be currently in Hebrew. Any guess at that? I would think that'd be a little tricky.
Let's see. How many different Hebrew typeface families are in the collection?
Yes.
Okay, so when we talk about a Hebrew typeface family, it gets complicated because how do you define a typeface family? The concept of typeface families as we know from Latin type did not develop in the same way for Hebrew. What I can share is that out of the two style variations that I was able to identify, we have several sizes. And we will have a regular proportion and a condensed proportion, not necessarily the same, exactly the same design. Again, it varies a lot, and there's a lot of mix in it. So again, it depends what it is that you're looking for when you're saying a typeface family.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be one of the best reasons to have you come here to look at our collection, because I think that the bulk of it is square. I think the only metal we have is not foundry type so much as it is it's metal mounted onto wood. I think either in copper or maybe zinc or something like that. But still, it would be nice just to have it looked over, because you know we have much to learn.
And me too. I would love to actually see the patterns, because again, speaking of families, you wouldn't have the option of cutting, use the same pattern for cutting an extended letter or a narrow letter. So in theory, you would be able to create a regular typeface and a sibling narrow typeface from the same pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you would need to look at it and kind of consider all the differences, but maybe there is something just like that out there.
Mm-hmm. There was a question asking if ATF had ever cast Hebrew. Do you know?
I think they did, not off the top of my head, but I think I did see with all the specimen that David has provided, there was ATF there.
Okay.
Yes. If you want to email me after this, I can look specifically in the specimen and be happy to reply.
So I have a wondering, and I'm just curious if you came along this. We were talking about the variations in the slant and things like that, and as I look at a variety of typefaces, some of them seem as though they are greatly affected by sign painters. And so when you were showing those signs where you have those variations, I was just thinking, if you went to a new country and decided to open up shop, the cheapest way to make a sign would be to make it yourself.
Right.
But if you decided to become stylish with your lettering, could that have something to do with someone whose job it was to maybe make type from something like that? And so you're maybe looking at the hand done work being translated wrongly.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I have this kind of, this maybe fantasy of, being able to locate a resource that would have that same, curve in the noon. Maybe that would kind of complete the story for me. But I think, yeah, that basically what happened. You would try to create the letters in different medias, and they would only do so much, right? You can control it to some, up to some degree, and then you have to just get better at it.
I would think one of your big difficulties is where can you go to find a Jewish culture that hasn't been disturbed or destroyed, that would go back at least 100 years, where you could get that? Do you think about either Russia or Poland as possibly being some of those places where you could learn a bit more?
Absolutely. And again, it depends on what has survived, um, because those stylistic options were created in Europe before they were created in, or at the time that they were created in America as well. And this is actually the next stage of my research, and I'm hoping to be able to share maybe next year more about Hebrew wood type that was created in Europe, and it looks very much the same in certain cases and very much different in other cases. So again, it really is endless, and things are starting to kind of come up and be unveiled. And it's fascinating to see that there was a market, there was a community, and there was this wish to accommodate that script in very different, sometimes very weird ways, even where it's clearly done by someone who's not familiar with the script, but it's still there, it's still out there, and it was printed and used.
All right. Oh, we're getting some nice things from David in terms of the.
Oh yes.
So,
oh, I recommend this article so much. It's a really good one. Yeah, go and read it.
well, and I don't know. Have you seen linotype specimen books that contain the Hebrew characters?
Yes, and they're pretty much I mean, before 1910, before the Hebrew world was washed with Frank Rohl, who introduced a new design and fixed many of the problems and had a different aesthetic than those Merubah typefaces. Before that, this is what you see, and they're again broadly very similar to one another. You can trace specific characters. I think the last time we met in Waysgoose, I talked about the specific character, the Ein, who used to break and then kind of adopted just the shape of the block. You can see that kind of being retained, the shapes are being retained through technologies and in other more and more specimen book as we go forward with the years. So not a lot have happened before 1910. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of difficult to track down a people who always seem to have been on the run, right?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it. Yes.
Do you see anybody designing now that you're pleased with or impressed with, or find doing some interesting things in Hebrew?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a very good time for Hebrew. I'm very pleased with what's going on. I guess in the world with typefaces, and as we use more devices and we're reading more off screens. I think there's much more awareness of typefaces and how important they are and what can they actually do for you. And yeah, that goes the same for Hebrew. And also this increasing interest in global scripts, which is, I find, the most exciting. I'm always so intrigued learning about different scripts, especially the kinds that I can't read, and seeing how this amazing the printing revolution kind of defected. It was such a major thing for the human race, and how it kind of got adopted into different cultures. So yeah, there's more awareness, there's more research being done, a lot of it outside of Israel in more academic spheres, and a lot of it in practice with just typeface designers local to Israel, who are publishing more and more typefaces, bigger and bigger families, more options for Hebrew italic, which is something that came into the scene very, very late because it was never inherent and never developed organically for the Hebrew scripts. So yeah, definitely, it's a great question. Yes, it's a very, very exciting time.
Good.
Yeah.
Has it encouraged you to try that yourself, or is designing?
To design,
Yeah.
I have so many typefaces in a folder on a drive. The ideas for typefaces, yeah. Yes, but I think that my problem is that once I discovered type research, I guess, I don't know, the nerd in me kind of awoke, and I found it so much more interesting than doing the design itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say that to me, this is the beauty or the magic of typeface design, because type and typography is such a part of culture and of communication and of language. You can't do one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always researching and I'm always designing, and vice versa. And I think you get the most skills when you kind of, the muscles in your brains are always working in those two disciplines. Everything informs the other, and the more you do it, the best the outcome is.
Mm-hmm. Well, you learn to ask more and more questions, which is always a good thing.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And you have to get used to sometimes, not coming up with an answer or never knowing the answers, or just, having an educated guess for the best case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. I really want to thank you. It's been such a nice presentation, and so interesting. It's been great to have you here. So just thank you for a great job.
Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to be with you and to share what I have to share. And I can't wait to visit you in person and finally see all the things that you have.
Well, I think, we should make time while there's construction going on over there, because it would make more sense, right?
That's true. And then you'll have to come over here, though.
True. Well, I would like to thank the audience as well. This has been really wonderful. There are a few things that I will just pass on to everybody. That next week, Friday the 20th, Jackie Vossler of the Caxton Club will be with us. So you're probably going to want to hang on to that. You can become a member of the Hamilton Woodtype and Printing Museum. It lets us do amazing things like get to talk to Shani. So that would be worth it in itself. But if you do go to woodtype.org, you can find that way to become a part of this and just keep these going. This, I think, I'll tell you, I was asked about one of my best successes last year, one of those review questions. And I said, being a part of Stephanie's Hamilton Hangs, because she's done so many now. And I think that it's brought us so many great people that's really been wonderful. And so it's such a great resource to share, and we get to meet such wonderful people. So anyway, that's most of it, and we'll sign off. And thank you all for coming again. It's been really fascinating, Shani. Thanks so much. Thanks, Logan, for your help, and Stephanie, as always, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shani. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Hope everyone has a lovely weekend. Thank you for joining us again on a Hamilton Hangs.
That's right. It's Friday. All right.